Please remember there are additional resources and things such as code samples at elithecomputerguy.com. So if you're watching one of these classes and you need to know what code looks like, or if you need links to the resources that we're using, please go to elithecomputerguy.com and take a look at our class posting there. Also, please remember that free to the end user classes are not actually free. It costs me a lot of money to be able to provide this type of content. So if you could click on the donate button and throw in a couple of dollars every month, this will help me be able to continue to provide you this type of material. Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy, and in today's class, I'm going to be teaching you about shebangs, the input function, and using arguments in Python scripts. So today's class is going to allow you to make your Python scripts a lot easier for end users to actually use and to be able to interact with, right? Up until this point in time, I think this is the 11th class in this series, everything that we've input into our scripts has basically been hard-coded in the script, right? We open the script up in VS Code, and then we input values for variables, or we dynamically create them with like the random function or something like that, and that is all within the script itself. Well, in the real world, when you're going to be wanting to create your script, either for you to use or for your end user to use, you're going to want the user experience, the user input, to be something that the average person is going to be able to feel comfortable with. And so that's what we're going to be showing you how to do today. So what the shebang does, the first lesson we're going to go over is the shebang. What this does is it allows you to fire off a script without having to call Python 3 or Python before you call the script. So up until this class, whenever we've run a Python 3 script from the terminal, you would have to do Python 3 space whatever the script name is, and that will run the script, right? A lot of the times we're actually running everything within VS Code, but if we're going to go to the terminal, we would have to go to the directory, again, Python 3 to say this is a Python 3 script, and then feed to the Python 3 script, and away you go. Well, one of the interesting things you can do with the shebang is basically within the Python script itself, you can write a line of code to tell the computer what interpreter is supposed to be used for this particular script so that you don't have to add the Python 3 before it. So you can do a period slash whatever the script name is, and then the script will, when it goes to run, it will see that it's supposed to be run in Python 3, and then it will run everything in Python 3 so that it's a little bit easier to use. This can be good if you're calling scripts from within other scripts, maybe like a startup function, that type of thing. Or again, if you just need to type things really quickly. Again, think about if you created scripts for administration tasks and you just want to be able to type them out very quickly to have them run to do whatever else. It'll be a lot easier to do period slash whatever the name is versus Python 3 space whatever the name is, so on and so forth. So that's what the shebang is. What the input function is you can actually have your script run. So once you've already called your script, you can have the script run, and then what input allows is for the end user to actually be able to type in information, and then for the script to be able to use those values that have been typed in for whatever that you want to do in the script. So if you want to add numbers, if you want to do some kind of like network troubleshooting, so you're going to do something like ping a host, that type of deal, you could say, basically, what host do you want to ping? The person types in the host that's supposed to be pinged, and then your script will run through and do whatever testing mechanisms that you have configured. So that's the input script. And then you have arguments. So arguments, again, if you're used to using command line tools, you'll be used to arguments. Basically, you have the command, so you'd have the script name, space, and then whatever arguments that you want to put in. And basically, this is all you code what the arguments are supposed to be, so that when they are put into the script, they're read by the script, the script will do whatever it is that you've written it to do. So with the script for that interactivity, you can either have the script run and ask for an input, or when you type out the script to run it, you can add an argument at the end. Those values can then be used within the script itself, again, so that the end user, even if the end user is simply you, it gives an easier way to actually be able to input values into the script so that they can be dealt with to do whatever task it is that you're trying to accomplish. So our first lab for today is the shebang. So what this is going to do is this is going to tell your computer what interpreter is supposed to be used in order to run the rest of the script. So what this allows you to do is instead of typing in Python 3 space, whatever the script name is, you can simply do period slash and the script name, and then the script will simply run. So this can be very useful for you. Again, if you create scripts for administrative tasks, simply cutting down on this keystrokes for the things that you might be able to screw up, and this can make your life a lot easier. Also, simply adding a shebang into your scripts can also be useful, going into the future to tell people, again, what interpreters are supposed to be used for this particular script if they're going to be running it, so it's a little bit easier for them to understand what's going on. When we take a look at the shebang, basically the shebang starts with the pound sign, the hash sign, then it has the exclamation point. So this is the start of the shebang, right? So normally when you see the hash, the pound value, that means comment. It means there is no, basically this should be ignored. When you have the pound exclamation, it's a shebang. So it says don't be ignored. Then what we're doing here is we're then doing the path to the environment variables. So I'm using a Mac OS. I'm using a Mac OS. That's, I have my MacBook Pro. That's what I use. This might be slightly different for your operating system. So if you're using Linux, if you're using Windows, this might be slightly different. Just simply do a Google search. But basically, in user bin environment, there's the environment file, and this has all the environment variables. One of the environment variables is basically where is Python 3 on your computer. And so it's saying go to the environment variables, find Python 3, and then with the Python 3 interpreter that you find there, run the rest of the script. So you can manually plug in the direct path to Python 3. So there is a direct path to Python 3, and you could actually plug this in here. The issue that you're going to deal with, again, we talk about legacy environments, not just environments that were created before you, but also to be thinking about the person that's going to be supporting the system 5 or 10 years from now, is if you put a manual path in here, and then for some reason that either changes or is different because of something somebody did in the past, then this whole shebang process may not work, because where you think Python 3 is, the interpreter might not actually be where Python 3 is, and you can run into some weird issues. So by going to the environment variables and calling Python 3, you're using the Python 3 that the computer that you're on is using, and you shouldn't run into any problems. So we just do user bin environment space, and we're saying Python 3. From here, we're going to simply print out, hello there, fellow geeks. That's all we're going to be doing. This script is called shebang hello. So if we go over here, you'll see this is in my root directory. So just to make life a lot easier with this kind of thing, most of these scripts, most of these classes, I just put everything in my root directory, and you can see shebang hello is here. Now, one of the important things in order to make the shebang work is you will need to have execute permission for this particular script. So if we do lsl, right, this lists out all of the files and folders that are in my home directory, and we can come down here and we can see shebang hello. We can see read, write permission, read permission, read permission, and that's it. We do not have the execute permission here, the X permission. So that tkinter class, for whatever reason, that has the X permission. So the next thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to do a change mod plus X on the shebang hello script. So just to show you, right? So let me clear this out. All right. So right now, if I try to run the script like I'm going to want to run the script, so period / shebang hello.py, right? So this, when you have a shebang, this is how you're able to run the script. Period / shebang -hello, or whatever your script name is. When we run this, you'll see permission denied. I do not have permission to execute this file from this. Even though, to be clear, if I do Python 3 shebang hello.py, it will run. See, if I run Python 3 shebang hello there, fellow geeks. But if I simply try to run it from the shebang, it says permission is denied because I do not have that execute permission. So I clear this out. I can do change mod space plus X. So this is going to add the execute permission to shebang hello.py. All right. So change mod plus the execute permission to my script. I don't get anything because I'm not supposed to get anything. Now what I can do is I can do that period / shebang hello.py. So that is all I'm currently using in order to run the script. And then I get hello there, fellow geeks. So when it sees this, it's going to read the shebang. Since I have that execute permission, it's going to say, okay, what interpreter am I supposed to going to need to use? And then it's going to find the interpreter, and then it's going to run it. You will notice that this seems to run just a tiny bit slower because it has to go through that little process. Now, why you have to have this period slash here is basically so the computer understands the path to go to. So again, remember in computers, nothing is ever auto-magically done. So if I just do shebang hello.py, we'll see command not found because it doesn't know what path it's supposed to follow for whatever reason for the shebang. So that's why you have to do the period slash first shebang hello.py. And if I can type worth a darn, and that will get you the answer. So the important thing is if you do period slash and you try to run and you get it fails you because of permissions. It means you don't have the execute permission. So there you need to do change mod plus X on the script. If you try to run it and it just fails, command not found, it means you didn't put the period slash before it. So you do the period slash before it with the proper permissions. And again, as I showed you here, this should be the path that should get you to Python 3 that will allow you to run the rest of the script. So now that you understand a bit about the shebangs, now let's go into the input function. So what this is going to allow us to do is when we run our script, we are going to be able to ask from our users for a value so that we can do something with in the script, right? So again, we can fire off an API call, we can communicate with the operating system, or we can simply just print out a little message here, right? So basically what we're going to be using is what's called the input function. So we have the input function here, we have the parentheses, and then basically you do the single quotation mark, and whatever is within the parentheses and the single quotation mark, that's what's going to show up on the screen, and that is going to be the prompt for your user. Whatever the user plugs in, when they hit enter, that value is then going to be assigned to the variable message, and then simply all we're going to do down here is print you said whatever the message is. Now again, you'll notice single quotation marks, double quotation marks. We open with a single quotation mark, close with a single quotation mark, and then I want to use quotation marks inside the message that gets printed out, so I'll be using double quotation marks here, right? Open this message, close this message, but here, since I'm using the double quotation marks inside, that will just simply be additional text. So if I run it from here, I can simply run it from here. We see what is your message, and I can say hello world. When I hit enter, you said, double quotation marks, hello world, right? It becomes interesting. As again, this is most likely what you're going to be seeing, right? Imagine you're doing your administrative tasks or whatever else. I do not have a shebang in this particular script, so I do have to type out Python 3, and then I do input.py, right? Hit enter. What is your message? Hello from the Cly. Hit enter. You said hello from the client. So again, imagine if you have some kind of administrative task you want to fire off. Again, pinging IP addresses, deleting things, finding things, whatever else. Basically, it could ask you, what are you trying to accomplish? Based off of what your response is, the script will fire off and do whatever task it is you told it to do. And so that's what we're looking at with the input here. So it's the input function. We simply create a variable, make it equal to the input function. That's the prompt. Whatever they put in, that will now be the variable value here, and then we're able to do something with it past that. So now we get to one of those fun places that can trip up noobs or can trip up old timers that aren't really thinking about it and haven't had enough coffee today, right? So one of the things you always need to be thinking about is this whole idea of data types, right? Whenever you're doing programming, you need to be thinking about data types. So what are data types? Data types are ints, are floats, are strings, are booleans, a whole bunch of different things, right? And basically what this is you're telling the program what type of data to expect and then how to deal with that particular type of data. So an int is a whole number. 10, 25, 525. Those are ints. Floats are decimal point numbers. $10.25, $300.50. 1.333333333 for 9 digits or whatever else. Those are floats. Strings are text. Now, the important thing to be thinking about is like when you're dealing with numbers, right? If you have a float, so if you have 1025 plus 950, and you add those together, but the final value is an int, then basically the decimal points will be taken off. So instead of getting, $19.75, the answer will end up being $19, right? So that could or could not be a problem for you. When you have numbers, and when you're thinking that you're adding numbers together, but instead you're actually adding strings together, you get something called concatenation, right? So basically, if you have num1 plus num2 and their ints, so let's say num1 is 2 and num2 is 4, and you add them together as ints, that would be 6. If num1 is 2 and num2 is 4, but they're seen as strings, you'll get 24 because it will concatenate it. If they're ints or numbers, plus means they actually get added together. If they're strings, they get glued together, which again, if you're not paying attention, you get a number at the end of the day, but it's definitely not going to be the right number. So we'll take a look at that with this. So basically what we're going to have is we're going to have num1 equals input, and we're going to ask for num1. Num2 equals input, and we're going to ask for num2. Answer 1 equals num1 plus num2 as they come in, and we're going to print that out here. Answer 2 equals num1 as an int plus num2 as an int, and we're going to print the answer out here, and I'll show you what the issue you can run into is, right? So I go to run this script, so it is asking me for num1 here, I put in 2, I hit enter. It's asking for num2, I put 4, I hit enter, and so what you'll see is when you do answer 1 equals num1 plus num2, it concatenated num1 and num2, so it's 2 plus 4, so the answer that you get out on the screen is 24, which is probably not what you want. Whereas answer 2, we have num1 turned into an int, num2 turned into an int, they are added together, and then we get the answer of 6, right? If we go over and we do this on the screen, so input add.py, just to show you again. So we have this input, right? So now we're just typing this out on the command line. Num1, let's say, is 4. Num2 is 10. Then we hit enter, right? When they're seen as strings, you get 410. When you turn them into ints, you get 14. And this, my friends, is where everything goes to hell. Right? Again, with programming, a lot of people are worried about math. And like whenever they ask me about math, they're like, Eli, in order to be a programmer, in order to be an IT guy, how good do you have to be at math? And here's the deal. Do you need to know trigonometry? Absolutely not. Do you need to know calculus? I'm not even sure what calculus, to be clear with you, I'm not even sure what calculus is. No, you don't need to know calculus. But when you talk about, are you good with math? Do you understand that one of these is definitely not the right answer? And would you see it if you were the one coding this particular project, right? That's the kind of thing that can screw you up. And so as you go forward, especially as you're using modules, as you're using functions, as you start inputting data into your systems, one of the things you really need to take a look at and verify is when data is assigned, when a value is assigned to a variable, you need to verify what data type that variable is, because you could run into some significant problems if you don't realize what's going on. Again, a concatenation versus an add can be a massive problem with your script. So I've showed you how to use the input function. So that actually allows your users to be able to input values into your script as your script is running. Now I want to show you how to use arguments in the Python world. So this is where you call the script and you add additional arguments to the end so that your script can simply fire off. So here for this particular lab, we're just going to be adding two numbers. But in our next lab, what I'm going to show you how to do is this is actually going to allow you to put in a host name, so either a host name or an IP address, and then based off of that argument, it's going to continuously ping to give you a very, very primitive version of a network monitor. But that is something that I'll show you in a second. For this particular lab, though, all we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding two numbers. Now, to kind of show you how this works, we can go over to the command line. So for here, we're going to do Python 3. So I'm still calling Python 3. I do not have a shebang in this particular script. And then do arg-input.py. And I'm going to run this. And when I run this, I'm going to hit enter. And then I get an error. Oh, what is this? Usage, arg, input, pi, first, second. The following arguments are required. It tells you what arguments are required. But crap, I don't really understand what's going on. Crap, I wrote this script like 2 days ago. How can I be expected to remember what I wrote 2 days ago? So what's cool is you actually get a help option when you have these arguments, when you use ArgParse. So what I can do is I can call Python 3 again. I can do arg-input.py space -h for help. Then I hit enter, and it gives me a little bit of help information. So it tells me what this script is supposed to do: add two numbers, positional arguments, first number, second number, and it shows options. I don't really have any options here, right? So this actually gives me a little bit of help information so I know how this script is supposed to operate. Again, this could be incredibly valuable as you create scripts that are supposed to do maintenance on your network, your infrastructure, basically do testing routines or whatever else. You put some help information in here, again, to remember what it is that you wrote a couple of days ago. Now with that, let's go over and actually take a look at the script itself. So we're going to import the ArgParse module. So the ArgParse module is built into Python, so you do not need to use pip. You don't need to install it. You just need to import it here. Then the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create our parser. So basically this is all of the values that we're going to parse. Parser equals the ArgParse module dot the argument parser function. We add the description equals add two numbers. So remember when I showed you that little help file and it said add two numbers? That's where that description comes for. Then we're going to add two arguments. So we do parser. So once we create a parser, so parser equals argparse dot argument parser with a description. We're going to have parser. We're going to add our first argument. We are going to call it first. So this is simply going to be called first. So we're going to deal with it as first later. First, second, all right? Help. So this is the help information. This is what information you put in that little help file. And then the data type down there is here. We're using type equals string. Then we're going to do parser dot add argument second. Help equals second number, and then type equals string down there. Then the arguments, so these are going to be all the arguments, equal parser, parse args. So basically we're going to use the parse args function to go through and then grab all of those arguments. So that is now within args. We're going to print out all the args. So again, so we can actually take a look at the arguments that we're dealing with. Answer 1 equals args.first plus args.second. So you notice those are strings. So this should get concatenated together. Answer 2 equals args.first as an integer plus args.second as an integer. And we'll print out answer 2. And so we should get those responses. So if we go over, right? We do Python 3, and then, oops, what is the script called? Arg input. Arg input.py. And then we do, let's say 10, and we do 44. Right, so Python 3, arg-input.py, 10 and 44, and then I hit enter. So this is printing out the args. So print args is here, so it's going to print out the namespace. It's going to say first equals 10 and second equals 10, right? So in order to get those variable values, right, we have args here. So args.first is going to be whatever the first argument is. Args.second is going to be whatever the second argument is. So these can be named whatever you want. It could be IP, it could be host, it could be any number of things, right? Then when we have them as strings, again, just to show you to be careful, it comes out to 10, 44. That got concatenated together, not added, concatenated. We turn the numbers into ints, and then we get 54. And so that is what arguments look like when you're using them in a Python script. Again, relatively simple. Do just take a look at things like the data types. And then again, when you're writing your script, don't just simply think about yourself using the script, but think about, the person that's going to be using the script a year or two from now. Or honestly, if you forget what the hell you did, putting in these little help functions in here can be very useful so that you can simply do the -h and see what the script is supposed to do. But that's really all there is for these arguments. So now that I've shown you how to create and use a shebang, and I've shown you how to use the ArgParse module, now we're going to simulate solving a problem in the real world. So one of the big issues in the real world is just seeing whether or not your computer is able to see other computers or servers. So basically we're going to build a very, very simple network monitor. What we're going to do is we're simply going to call the script. We are going to give an IP address or a host name as an argument for the script. And then the script is simply going to continuously ping that IP address or host name to tell us whether or not it is up. So if we go over, we can type in, so we do /arg-ping.py. So since I have the shebang, right, this shebang means I don't have to put Python 3 to begin with because it will automatically use Python 3. Then you use space cnn.com, right? So arg-ping.py, we're going to do cnn.com, and then I'm going to hit enter. So basically, it's going to show me the command that's running, ping-c count1 cnn.com. So it's going to ping cnn.com once, and then it's going to tell me what the results are. And as you can notice here, about every second, it's continuously pinging cnn.com, and it's giving me a new response here. So this can be very useful if you're doing some kind of maintenance on your network, especially if you have to deal with things like routers, right? You're plugging the routers together and oops, did I plug it into the input or the output port? Again, it can happen in the real world. You can simply have this up on one of your screens as you're going through and you're doing some of the different networking configurations. You can see if these stats change on you, if it starts working, if it stops working, that type of thing, right? To get out of this, I simply hit Control-C, that will exit. And again, all I had to do in order to make this work is /arg-ping.py, so the script, and then whatever the argument is. Again, I could go here, and I could do, I don't know, Fox if I wanted. And again, and it'll tell me, the latency and everything if I go and I do Fox. Let me get out of this. So again, Control-C, we'll get out of it. And then we can go and we can take a look at the script. Now, some of the stuff that I'm showing you in the script today might be a little bit over your head. Again, that's one of the big problems with trying to teach stuff in technology is a lot of times there's a lot of stuff at like the exact same level. So trying to teach one thing, you need to know something else. It's a bit of a mess. So just try to follow along. We are going to have more classes on this type of thing going in the future. So if you don't fully understand what the script does right now, don't worry, you will get the hang of it later. So up here we have the shebang. So the shebang says use your bin environment, go to the environment variables, and then use Python 3 in order to run this script. We're then going to import the ArgParse module. We're then going to import the OS module. So the OS module is what allows us to run that ping command and get the value back from the ping command. And then from the time module, import sleep. So basically with this, it's going to run, it's going to pause for a second, it's going to run, it's going to pause for a second, it's going to run, it's going to pause for a second, and we're going to use the sleep function in order to do that. Again, do remember in the Python world, even something as simple as the sleep function, you still have to import the darn thing. Okay, parser equals exactly what we had before. Parser equals argparse.argumentParser description ping a host. So that's what's going to happen. We're going to ping a host with a script. Parser.add argument. It's going to be called host. So that's going to be what we're going to be using going into the future. So args.host. Help, enter an IP or host name, type equal string. Since it's an IP address, we're going to have it as a string. Args equal parser.parse underscore args. So we're going to take all the arguments that we've added, we're going to run it through the parse args function, and now we're going to have an args variable with all of these values. Now we're going to go to a while true loop. I'm not actually sure I showed you this in the loop class. But this is a while true loop. What a while true loop is basically it's an infinite loop. You want a loop to continuously run and not stop. There's no condition. It's not while x is below 100 or while x is above 100 or something like that. Basically what this says is continuously run. So while true is continuously run, and then you do the colon. We're then going to do this try except. So this will truly be in a different class. So one of the big things in the Python world, right, is that you're going to be interacting with other systems. So API calls with the operating system itself, that type of deal. So when you're interacting with other people's systems, basically you need to say what happens if the communication worked properly and what happens if the communication failed. It's kind of like an if-else statement, sort of, only if you're actually trying to communicate with somebody else's systems. So what this does is basically it says try to do this. If this fails for some reason, do this instead. Right? Again, we will definitely have a class on this. So we're going to have command equals an F string ping space -c1. So in the Linux world or the Mac world, whenever you run a ping command, it's going to ping forever. Right? When you run ping, it'll continuously ping until you tell it to stop. So in the Windows world, it'll ping 4 times and stop. That is not the case in the Linux or in the Mac world. We want it to ping once, and then whatever the results of that command will be, those results will go into this response variable down here. So ping for a count of 1, args.host, right? So we created the host up here. That's the argument that goes in, cnn.com, fox.com, 192.168.1.1, whatever else. So ping -c1, cnn.com. We're then going to come down here. This is where we use the OS module. There's a function called popen. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to put this command through the OS module, and then the value that comes out is going to be assigned to response. Now, when we do this, response is actually going to be an object. So we need to be able to grab the text out of that object. Again, we'll kind of talk about this in later classes. So what we're going to do is we're going to have response read all the text that's in the response object and then assign it to response. So now response is going to equal the text that comes back from the command that you submitted to the operating system. If for some reason this fails, we're going to have except, and response is going to equal fail, right? And so that's one of the big things, we'll talk about this in another class, is if for whatever reason this try fails, then you need to do something such as still assign a value to the response variable so that when you go to print it out later, there is actually a value there and your script doesn't fail. So basically run this command, get the text value from this command. If for some reason this fails, response will equal fail. We're going to do os.system. So this sends a system command basically to the command line, and we're going to send clear. So right, whenever I have stuff on my screen and I type clear, that clears a screen. That is literally what we're going to be doing here, because if we don't do that, basically the command is going to run, and then the command is going to run, and then the command is going to run, and then our entire screen is going to fill up. Clear will basically clear the screen between every iteration of this command. Then we're going to print out the command on the screen, again, from a troubleshooting standpoint to verify we put in the right command, we didn't do something stupid. We're then going to print out the response, so the text, so the read function will give us the text from the command, and we're going to print that out as we showed you before, and then we're going to sleep for a count of 1 for 1 second, and this will continuously loop. So again, as I showed you before, arg-ping.py, fox.com, I hit enter, and so now it's pinging fox.com, and we are getting this text response back that comes back on the screen. And so this is a bit of a simulation of the type of script that you can write using a Shebang and using the ArgParse module with Python. So there you go. You now know about shebangs so that you can simply run a script without having to type Python 3 in front of it. We know about the input function, and we know about the ArgParse module that allows you to add arguments when you call your script in order for something to happen. When we're dealing with the shebangs, do remember to modify the permission for your script to add the executable function, right? So chmod space plus X, whatever your script name is, and that will add the ability to actually execute that script, which is going to be very, very important. If you don't do that, you're simply not going to have permission, and it's not going to work properly. Again, when we take a look at this shebang, so this shebang here is what you need for Mac OS. Depending upon your computer, you might need to do a bit of a Google search in order to see what you need to type in. Again, if you're using Windows, if you're using different distribution of Linux, that type of thing, you might need to type something else in here. With here, we're using the environment variables. So we're going from user, bin, the environment variables, and we're calling Python 3. This is one way to call Python 3, or we can call Python 3 directly. So Python 3, it's actually a file in the folder structure, so you can call that directly. You might run into some weird problems though. Again, not just with legacy systems, basically systems that you now have to maintain so that somebody else built, but again, going into the future, somebody updates Python 3, modifies Python 3 some point in the future, and all of a sudden, if you're using that manual path instead of the environment variable, you might run into some weird issues. Past that, I showed you how to use the input function. So very, very, very simple there with the input function. Basically, you simply have the variable equals the input function, and then you're able to plug in whatever the prompt is that you want to be, and then you're able to interact with that variable just like you would any other time. Again, I showed you then how to use ArgParse, and with that, you just go through and you create the parser, then you add the arguments, then you use the function to bring all of those arguments together into one args variable, and then from there you're able to do args period, whatever the names are, to call the values that came in from the arguments and go from there. One of the nice parts with it is, again, you can use that -h to actually build in help functionality for the script. So again, you or somebody else trying to use a script can make sure you know how to use a script without actually having to go in and read it. Again, when we take a look at something like this ping thing, right? This is pretty big because of whatever. But this seems pretty simple. You're like, oh, Eli, why do I need a help function for that particular ping script? Again, that's 20 lines of code. You can just go in and take a look at it. Imagine if it's much, much more complicated. Again, imagine if you have a script that's 500 lines of code. You have something going out. It's monitoring the network. It's pulling information. It's pushing information. It's doing a lot of different things, right? You may ask for like 1 or 2 arguments, but those 1 and 2 arguments do a lot. And so by simply having that little help functionality, it can make it a lot easier for somebody else to understand what the script is supposed to do and what it's asking for. And again, it's always funny to laugh at the users. The users are too stupid to understand my script. Yeah, take it from me. You've had a couple of long days. Things aren't going well at home with a spouse or whatever. You wrote a script literally 2 days ago. You go back to run that script and you're like, crap, what does this script do again? Having a help file can be useful, not just for the users. So one of those things to think about. So there we go. That was another class in this particular series. Again, as we go along, I'm going to keep adding more and more of this functionality into the scripts that we do. And also with that final script that I showed you with the ping, we had the try except in there. We had a couple of things there. I'm going to show you how to use that in additional classes. At any time, if you get a little bit confused with some of these things, just realize sometimes there's just like a whole bunch of information that's like equally important. And so it can be a little bit difficult to teach it at one time. So if you're a little bit confused, just keep going on with the classes. Most likely in the next few classes, everything will make a lot more sense for you. So there you go. As always, I enjoy teaching this class, and I look forward to seeing the next one.